Welcome to the Book Fair, Children's Literature for Grown-Ups. I'm Anthony. This week I have another exciting interview for you. Samuel Sattin, in collaboration with Japanese studio Guruhiru, brings to life a reimagination of Osamu Tezuka's Unico that is out now by Scholastic Graphix and is in fact the first manga produced and published by Scholastic. I don't want to take up too much time with the setup, so let's go ahead and roll straight into the interview. Hello, Samuel. Welcome to the podcast. Why don't we start off with having you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, my name is Samuel. I'm a writer. I have put out mostly graphic novels over the last 8 years, but also some prose books as well and nonfiction. My graphic novel with co-creator Ry Hickman was nominated for an Eisner this year, which was really cool. And I'm also the writer of Unico Awakening, which is the new series coming out from Scholastic Graphix tomorrow.
And can you tell us a little bit of the story about Unico? Because I'm aware that this is not the first version of the comic, or the manga, I should say.
Yeah, you're correct. So this was actually based off a manga from 1976 by the god of manga himself, Osamu Tezuka. Tezuka is known as the god of manga because he basically created the entire manga and anime industry as we know it today. And he, for your listeners, might know him as the creator of Astro Boy. So he's he's just a world. He's a legend, and he created this character on a trip he took to the United States in 1976 in collaboration with Sanrio. And Unico tells the story of a young unicorn whose ability to spread love and kindness and inspire others draws the ire of the gods. And one goddess in particular, the goddess of love and beauty, Venus, becomes envious of Unico's ability to inspire human beings, tries to have him destroyed. She asks one of her servants to do so, but that servant, the West Wind, instead of doing so, takes pity on Unico and decides to save him. And by the only way she can do so, however, is to wipe his memory and to hide him throughout space and time. Because every time that he starts to remember who he is, and his powers awaken, he draws the eye of the goddess again. So it's essentially he's being chased through space and time by a vengeful goddess.
He has his memory erased each time by the West Wind. Is it kind of fair to assume that this could be seen as a continuation of the previous forms of Unico?
In a way, yes, except that we work really closely with Tezuka Productions in Japan, which is the namesake company of the creator of Unico, and fantastic art team, Japanese art team, Guruhiru. And we've been given the green light to kind of end the series because it was never actually ended. So we can kind of expand upon it and create a more of a modern world for Unico to inhabit. So it's a little bit different. In this one, there's really an active push to try to break his curse.
Must be a lot of pressure.
Oh yeah, well it ran for a short amount of time, but then there were two really popular animated films that came out in the 80s that kind of gave it a cult status, and that's why so many people in the West know about it. That's why so many people came out and supported our Kickstarter campaign when we first put it out, because they remember those movies from when they were young.
So it's good that you mentioned the Kickstarter, because it did begin there. How is it transferring from a Kickstarter project where you're pushing out updates to backers who are so passionate about the project to being moved to Scholastic, one of the largest publishers in the world?
It's an incredible feeling, and one that I'm incredibly grateful for. We essentially, we started as a Kickstarter because there was this idea that we didn't go directly to a publisher because we thought that if we did so, they wouldn't really be able to see exactly how exciting the story was and how exciting the character was and the enthusiasm for it. So we wanted to decide to try to bring it to Kickstarter instead to show that there was a enthusiasm for the return of this character, and that's exactly what happened. We ended up getting a lot of people who are so excited to see Unico kind of return, and from there, Scholastic kind of saw it was amazing. Scholastic saw eye to eye with our vision, except for even further, and we were able to bring it to a much larger scale to more people and with more books. And it's just it's a dream. It's just incredible.
Yes, so you're able to use Kickstarter to show publishers that there's so much interest in it. Was it you and the team that approached Scholastic, or were you approached by Scholastic?
So yeah, we put out a Kickstarter edition of the book as well, which is coming out, which is being delivered right now to backers, which is great. Um, and for my agent was actually the one to submit a pitch to submit material to Scholastic, and and that's how that came to be. And they were immediately saw potential in it, and things went from there.
Nice. And this is the first manga being published originally by Scholastic. How does it feel to be part of such a milestone for the company, for this publisher in particular?
I mean, again, I'm incredibly grateful. It's a huge. I take it as a big responsibility and something that I have to be respectful of. And and also it's a collaborative effort. So I work directly with Tezuka Productions and the artist team Guruhiru, and we do this together. So step by step going forward as we bring this to a new generation. And I think that's what makes me feel more confident as I'm not doing it. Not and it's not just me. It's a collaborative project that we're bringing forward together. So and yeah, but we all feel an incredible amount of responsibility to be able to make sure that we follow through in the promise of providing an incredible, the story that they want.
Osamu Tezuka believed that comics are an international language. Could you talk about how the international collaborative process behind Unico reflects his vision?
Well, yeah, that's the hope for it. Tezuka was such an incredible, he was a luminary. He did believe that comics could really bridge gaps between cultures. And he was also really inspired by other works from other cultures too. Like one time he basically just saw the poster for Fritz Lang's Metropolis and decided to make his own a version of Metropolis that had nothing to do with the film and was just called Metropolis and was his own kind of inspired by a poster that he saw from a Western work. And like he did adaptations of things like Crime and Punishment and kind of put his own fresh spin on them all. And he really did believe in kind of the reinvention of stories and the collaborations in the power of collaboration. And so that's why we feel so, it's so important for us to carry it forward that tradition. And I actually received a letter from Tezuka's daughter. Recently, we received a letter that was so great, and I can't go through the entire thing, but I'll say that she said that the person who might have probably would appreciate Unico most would have this new Unico most would have been Osamu Tezuka himself. And so we were like, oh, that's so fantastic to hear. So we just, we're just trying to follow in the footsteps and kind of bring awareness and the story to the world as it is today. It's a great one, and I think that people can benefit from it.
Tezuka taking inspirations from Western work and adapting it into manga, is that something that we can see a lot of in comics with things like there are lots of illustrated versions of classic novels and Shakespeare? Is that something that just speaks to how universal comics are as an art form?
I think so. I think so. And then also just and I think that we do a good amount of it here. I think that in Japan there's even more of it. If you even look at like, if you look at I mean I know it's anime, but you look at Miyazaki works, right? Miyazaki Ghibli works. Many of those are taken from novels and stories and kind of reinterpreted and put through their own kind of lens. and making something new, which I think is the coolest thing, the idea of making something new. So that's why less than an adaptation we call Unico, this new Unico reimagining, because we want to kind of, you know, homage the material and make sure that we adhere to it while also creating a new story in a new place for the imagination to go.
And what is the process like as the writer? Because I know that you have a separate team that is working as the on the illustrations. So what's the process of writing a comic for the I guess you would call a script writer?
Huh? Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, I write really detailed scripts, which in this case are sent to for translation, and then approval by Tezuka Productions, and then to our awesome artists who go and they put their. I mean, I love collaboration myself, so when they find something when they see the script, they always kind of, and I encourage this, they'll find things that they want to shift around as well and kind of interpret as well, which is part of the great thing of working on comics.
Unico does a really great job of blending that Western writing style with the Japanese illustration style. Do you think that that's something that kind of starts at the collaboration process?
Yes, I think that absolutely does. I think um, one of the things that I think I see sometimes is, you know, I'll just say with Japanese media is that sometimes people will in the West or in the United States will want to take a property and they'll want to take a license and they'll want to take it over and they'll want to make it their own thing, but they don't work with anybody in Japan to do so. They do it on their own. And that's okay, but it often turns out to be a little less, have a little less heart in it, I think, because I think it's really important to, you know, work with the source material and really honor it in a way that's really important and not try to just make it your own thing, completely on your own. So yeah, it starts at, I think that really this type of collaboration starts at very much the ground level when you decide we're going to work. This is not just my project. This is our project. And so, this really it belongs to us. And so, that is an important mentality, I think, to consider when you really want to have a good collaboration.
And yes, we've definitely seen a fair share of properties being brought into the West with things like Godzilla, Dragon Ball Z, where they just completely disregard the source material. How much how much reference material have you gone through in preparation for writing this new Unico adaptation?
I've looked at everything there possibly is to look at, and you know, I went also when this was happening. I went to Japan during the pandemic, actually, before the Kickstarter started, and that was really interesting because Japan at the time was not allowing very many people in, so I had to get a visa, and it was a whole entire process. And I got to go to Tezuka Productions and go into the Tezuka Library and find stuff there too that was really that you might not necessarily see elsewhere, especially in the United States, where it's harder to find those things in print. And so, yeah, I did as much research as I possibly could. I also did that kind of thing where I where I looked at some of the stuff that wasn't working, not just with the Unico, but like you were saying, some of the things that came over and weren't necessarily working well, and kind of, well, what maybe didn't work about this? What didn't go as well as they would have hoped? And trying to think about that in order to strengthen this story.
And as far as traveling back and forth between the United States and Japan for this collaboration, do you think that there's any hopes for Unico bridging the international market?
Yes, I mean, right now Unico is going to be published to begin with in 12 languages, which is wild and incredible. And right now, I know the Japanese are looking at publishing their version as well. So, my hope is that it is tricky with Japan because they have so much stuff that they produce and really enjoy on their own that they don't always need to look outwards for stuff. But it's our hope that really we can make a breakthrough there too. But time will tell. But yeah, they're definitely going to be publishing it over there, so that's going to be cool to see.
outside of the original Tezuka Unico manga, what other forms of comics or manga were an inspiration for you? Not just for Unico Awakening, but just for your entire career.
Oh, I read and I read everything. So I grew up in the 80s and 90s. Of course, anime was a big part of what inspired me, but then also I was reading superhero comics. I was reading Batman, I was reading Superman, I was reading all the new Image books that came out in the 90s, that were some of which were better than others. I got really inspired by Jeff Smith's Bone. I love Bone. Bone was one of my breakthrough books. And one of my favorite books growing up was also Elf Quest. And so, by the Peonies. And yeah, I read everything that I possibly get my hands on. And I think that really what inspired me was when somebody did something a little bit different than what other people were doing. I think that's what drew me to Bone, what drew me to Outquest. They were such beautiful, fantastical stories that were just beautifully drawn and something altogether their own. And that's kind of what inspired a lot of my work, I think.
I think that Unico definitely speaks to the something different aspect. Instead of having a chosen one human character, it has this adorable little unicorn who goes through a magical transformation, and we see that superhero influence in a climactic action sequence, and it's really beautiful. So as far as manga and comics, there is a bit of a stigma in libraries and public library, school libraries in particular, where librarians and teachers will put them on vacation and not allow students to check them out. As someone who is so deeply involved in the creation of them, do you have anything that you may want to say to either the teachers or to students who may feel disenfranchised by having access to their favorite books limited?
Well, I mean, it's hard sometimes to speak to people who've already decided that something is not okay, right? But if I could, I would just say, look, comics are books. Comics is reading. You are reading a comic, you are reading a book, and if anything, comics really help with literacy. There have been a lot of studies that show it that when kids have trouble reading, if you give them comics, they can not only graduate to reading more fluidly, but they can also read other forms of other mediums, whether it's prose or anything else. So it's storytelling, and it's a certain kind of storytelling through visual narrative, and that's one of the oldest things that we've been doing as humans since we've been humans. And so, I think that try to relax your standards on your perceived standards of what you think is going to what is a real book or not, and give your kid a comic.
I absolutely 100% agree. It's all about encouraging children to read, and if it's something that they're passionate about, they're going to be more interested in reading it. Comic books, especially since you're mostly focused on reading the dialogue and have action and movement illustrated, it is definitely more helpful for reading comprehension.
Absolutely, absolutely. And some readers have to they access information in that way, and some people do in general in that way, and that's a beautiful thing. So it's just like yeah, comics are a brilliant way to convey story and ideas, and everybody should be reading them.
And what is it specifically about comics? I mean, I'm guessing this whole conversation is leading to this, but what is it that brought you into writing for comics in particular?
Oh, well, I think part of it is just what I grew up loving, and then I grew up so obsessed with comics. But, I think that what I really started to learn is that, there are things that can happen in comics that can't happen with any other medium. And this is true for all mediums, but there's something so incredible about the way in which you can tell a story through visual narrative and visual language that that you know uh, just inspires me and just really makes me feel like the power of story and uh, and that's why I love them so much. I feel like every single story I read in comics that really moves me is just does so more so than any other art form, which I love a lot of other stuff too. I'm just saying that just comics in general um, really move me, and also they can be done by just a couple of people or a person on their own. Nobody needs anything special to be able to. Nobody needs if you make a film, you have to have a couple hundred people, or depending on the film, you have to have people involved to make it. A comic, you can bring a whole world to life with a couple people, and that's really beautiful to me.
I very strongly agree with the whole, it's something that you can do with a minimal team or by yourself. This is something that I'm doing on my own, and I love it.
Right. Absolutely.
You graduated with an MFA in comics from California College of the Arts. What would your younger self say to you or about you going to school for comics?
You're like, what? Yeah, it's just like, are you kidding me? Yeah, that's what my younger self would say. My younger self would have no idea, but it'd have his little mind blown because, the comics program that we went to was the first one of its kind. We were the first class of the MFA comics. Now there are more sprouting up, but that was the first one. And so I didn't even know what to expect. I was like, okay, I'm going to do this, and it was absolutely rewarding on so many different levels. So I would tell my younger self, like, you just wait, you're going to really enjoy this whole comics thing.
And to close out the interview, how, Samuel, would you describe yourself and the work that you do as a writer?
Ooh, a great question. I just want to write the type of stories that really helped me when I was younger. Books helped me escape. They helped me learn. They helped me in so many different ways. They help me develop my creativity, and I would want I would want to make the kind of books that do the same for others. That means a lot to me.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, Samuel. This has been Samuel Sattin, author of Unico Awakening, out now through Scholastic in collaboration with Guruhiru Studios. And if you like the work being done here with the Book Fair Children's Literature for Grown-Ups, the simplest and freest way to support the podcast is simply by sharing it with friends, family, educators in your lives. You can also rate and review the podcast wherever your podcasts are found. What's up, kitty cat? You can also follow the podcast on Instagram, Threads, and Facebook at BookFairPod. And if you really do love the work we do, you can support the podcast financially through a link in the podcast description or at patreon.com/thebookfair. That is book, F-A-I-R-E. Thank you so much for listening, and as always, I'll talk at you next time.